Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first word. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for the spring, fresh love. Sweet lyrics, something for heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet heart, strong and complete when it's been time. Mine is the sunlight, mine is morning, one of the one light, even softly. Praise with the nation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day. Morning is good, like a morning, that word was spoken, like the first word. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for the spring, fresh love.
Good Sunday morning to you. It's a particularly good Sunday morning, I think. The weather is incredible out there. Got a lovely crowd, and you even balance the room mostly. Just don't think the whole thing's sliding this way anymore. Positive. We got some folks we haven't seen in a while joining us. Since the trade deadline, the Mets have won more than they've lost. I mean, this is we have into some good stuff here. It's lovely to have everybody here. For those online, this is Presbyterian Church of the Covenant in Greensboro, North Carolina. You can learn more about us at the web address you'll see down on the bottom of the screen, athinkingchurch.org. We hope that you will see a little bit more about us. And if you're in a place where you could donate to help us stay online, we certainly would appreciate that. For those that are here, we won't pass the basket. It's right over here on the piece of furniture to the side. We're glad that you are all here. You know, last week we did my kind of take on the book of Job, which is a kind of a different perspective, new angle. And during our question and response phase, someone brought up the tirade, as we've been taught in the God Goes On, saying, who do you think you are, basically. And I said, you know, that could be a fun one to do a message on. So we're going to do that today. I'm going to take on that whole chapter. We're not going to read anything from another author, just because it's a little bit of a long reading, but it's such good stuff. So we're going to read Job chapter 38 from the New Revised Standard Version, updated edition. This is right after, you know, Job has basically like shook his fist at God and said, answer me. Hear now these words. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up your loins like a man. I will question you, and you shall declare to me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determines its measurement? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid the cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the heavenly beings shouted with joy? Or Who shut in the sea with doors when it burst out from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band, and prescribed bounds for it, and set bars and doors, and said, thus far shall you come and no farther, and here shall your proud ways be stopped? Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place, so that I might take hold of the skirts of the earth, and the wicked be shaken out of it? It is changed like clay under seal, and it is dyed like a garment. Light is withheld from the wicked, and their uplifted arm is broken. Have you entered into the springs of the sea and walked in the recesses of the deep? Have the gates of death been revealed to you, or have you seen the gates of deep darkness? Have you comprehended the expanse of the earth? Declare, if you know all of this, where is the way to the dwelling of light, and where is the place of darkness, that you may take it to its territory, and that you may discern its path to home? Surely you know, for you were born then, and and the number of your days is great. Have you entered the storehouses of snow? Or have you seen storehouses of hail, which I have reserved for the time of trouble, for when the day of battle and war? What is the way to the place where the light is distributed, or where the east wind is scattered upon the earth? Who has cut a channel for the torrents of rain, and a way for the thunderbolt, to bring rain on a land where no one lives, on the desert which is empty of human life, to satisfy the waste and desolate land, and to make the ground put forth grass? Has the rain a father? Or who has fathered the drops of dew? From whose womb did the ice come forth? And who has given birth to the hoarfrost of heaven? The waters become hard like stone, and the face of the deep is frozen. Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades, or loose the cords of Orion? Can you lead forth the Mazzaroth in their season, or can you guide the bear with his children? Do you know the ordinances of heaven? Can you establish their rule on earth? Can you lift up your voice to the clouds, so that a flood of waters may cover you? Can you send forth lightning, so that they may go and say to you, here we are? Who has put wisdom in the inward parts of, or given understanding to the mind? Who has the wisdom to number the clouds? Or who can tilt the water skins of the heavens, when the dust runs into a mass and the clods cling together? Can you hunt the prey for the lion, or satisfy the appetite of young lions when they crouch in their den, or lie in wait in their covert? Who provides for the raven its prey, when the young ones cry to God and wonder about for lack of food? May we add blessing and meaning to the reading of these words. I just felt like we needed to hear the whole thing to understand what was going on there. I mean, that's pretty intense. So we're going to get to talking about that in a minute. First, Joel, let's some music from you.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to answer all those questions.
I was hoping somebody would.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. I'm gonna trouble the water. Good children, all dressed in red, wade in the water. Children, wade, wade in the water. They gotta wade in the water. Wade in the water. Children gotta wade in the water. I'm still the children. Children all dressed in white. Wade in the water. Children in the lights. Wade in the water. They gotta wade in the water. Wade in the water. Children gotta wade in the water. I'm gonna trouble. You don't believe I've been redeemed. In the world, the single world looking for me. They can't wait in the long wait in the long children out of the for the children. God's for the children. For the children.
Well, you answered one of the questions. It's a start. You gotta start somewhere. My message today is entitled "The Box Was Never Big Enough." So last week we mostly talked about Job's friends, and honestly, as we saw, they actually started off pretty well. They showed up, they sat with Job in the dust for 7 days. They didn't try to, explain his suffering or turn his suffering into a lesson of any kind. And then they opened their mouths, right? They decided that there had to be a reason for what God had happened to Job. Good people, they thought, good people are rewarded, bad people are punished. So if Job was suffering, Job must have done something to deserve it. And the longer Job refused their explanation, the more certain they became of their explanation. Job, however, as we learned last week, wouldn't cooperate. He refused to confess something that he had not done. He refused to call injustice justice. Just because, and he refused to do it, even though his friends needed their theology to work, which is why they were trying to force it on him. But instead, Job decides to question God. He argued and he demanded an answer from God. And then finally, in our reading today, God answers. Who is this that darkens counsel by word without knowledge? Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Who shut the sea in with doors? I mean, as you heard, God does not hold back. And we have traditionally been taught that this is sort of, God putting Job back in his place. Job got a little too bold. He asked one too many questions. So God shows up with this cosmic resume and reminds Job who is in charge. Cosmic resume. Where were you when I created the world? Can you control the oceans? Can you order the stars around? No? Then maybe stop asking questions. Now, that is certainly one way to read Job. But it leaves us with a troubling picture of God, I believe. See, Job is sitting in ashes after losing his livelihood, his health, his children, and God's response amounts to, do you have any idea how powerful I am? Frankly, it doesn't sound like an answer. It sounds more like intimidation. So I have to wonder if something else is happening here, okay? Because that certainly doesn't sound like the God that Jesus tried to teach about. Job has demanded an explanation. And his friends have spent most of the book insisting, hey, we already have the explanation. They believe, that the world runs according to a simple moral formula. Faithfulness brings blessing, sin brings suffering. It's neat, it's tidy, gives them an answer for everything. And then God describes a creation that is anything but neat and tidy. There are oceans that burst from a womb. There are storehouses of snow. There are constellations beyond human control. There are lions hunting, ravens crying out for food, rain falling in places where no human lives. Personally, I find that one particularly interesting. God asked, who cuts a path for the rain to, quote, bring rain on a land where no one lives, on the desert, which is empty of human life, to satisfy the waste and desolate land, and to make the ground put forth grass? Rain falls where there's no farmers waiting on it. Grass grows where there's no person who will harvest it. Creation is doing things that do not benefit us, answer to us, or fit inside of our ideas about what everything is for. See, Job's friends have been speaking as though the entire universe were this sort of divine accounting system organized around human behavior. But God comes in and describes something much bigger, much stranger, much wilder than that. So we're going to pause here for just a moment. I'm going to ask you just call out the things that come to mind. What are some of the phrases, since we're talking about this kind of thing right now, what are some of the phrases that people use when they're trying to explain exactly why God allowed something to happen? What kinds of things do you typically hear?
God needs an angel.
God needs an angel.
God's will.
It's God's will.
Everything happens for a reason.
Everything happens for a reason. God is testing you.
That's his favorite one.
Yeah,
He never gives you more than
you can handle. I've got several friends that I used to have that I can prove that point wrong. So now, what do you do? What do all of those responses? What do they have in common? What's similar about them?
Put God in charge. God's in control.
God's in control.
It's your fault.
It could be your fault. Yeah, some of those do kind of. They assume that we know what God's doing. They claim certainty about God, and also a lot of them are designed to close down any questions, to just make it stop. Right. All right. So that is the box. Those statements, what they're designed to do, that's the box. So we take something as complex as suffering, something as untamable as God, something as interconnected as creation, and then we squeeze it into a sentence that begins, oh, God did this because. The sentence gives us the comfort of an answer, sure. But it may have very little to do with God, honestly. You see, sometimes those answers tell us more about what we need than they tell us about God. We want a God we can predict. We want a world we can control, a formula that assures us that tragedy will stay away as long as we follow the rules. A manageable God feels safer than a wild God. And that's the real problem with trying to put God in a box. Eventually, we start protecting the box instead of caring for the people that are sitting in the ashes. That's exactly what happens to Job's friends. Their theology for them, their theology couldn't be wrong, so Job had to be wrong. They became so committed to defending their explanation, their box, they could no longer hear the person their explanation was hurting. Now, the problem wasn't that they lacked faith. It wasn't that at all. The problem was that they lacked humility. They were so certain that they understood God that they could not imagine God might be bigger than their understanding. And I think that Job 38 comes crashing into that certainty, sort of like a whirlwind as it begins. You see, God does not give Job ultimately a reason for his suffering. God doesn't even tell him about the conversation in the heavenly court that happens. God doesn't say, here's why your children died, or here's the lesson that you were supposed to learn. See, and instead, God dismantles the kind of universe in which the friends' explanations would have made any sense at all. The world that God describes is not a vending machine where good behavior goes in and blessings come out. It's alive. It's interconnected. It's beautiful. It's dangerous and far beyond our control. Now, I do want to be a little bit careful here. Saying that the world is complex is not an explanation for Job's suffering. Mystery's no answer. It is just an admission that our answers have limits. Nor should we hear that God's question, we shouldn't hear it as saying that Job's pain is insignificant compared to the size of the universe, which I've certainly had preached at me before that's what it means. I mean, Job's children are still dead. His losses are still real. A tour of creation that God takes him on doesn't make any of that acceptable. But Job has demanded to be heard, and God enters into the argument. You know, the friends talk about God. Job talked to God. The friends, they protected their certainty, but Job brought his anger and his grief, his confusion, his accusations. And in the end, God says Job spoke rightly in a way that the friends did not. So apparently, questions do not push us away from God. Sometimes they're what keep us from settling on a version of God that is too small. Here's the thing, you may never receive an explanation of what has happened to you, why it has happened to you. That doesn't mean, though, that your questions in them are wrong. It means that the world is just too complex, too wild, too interconnected to reduce it to God did this because. And I get it. I do not know is not especially satisfying in moments like that. When our lives hurt, we really do. We want answers. We want to loosen ends that are tied. We want the loose ends to end up being tied up neatly. We want someone to tell us what all of this means. But here's the thing. A false answer does not become healing simply because it's tied to religion. As we talked about last week, sometimes I do not know is actually the most faithful thing we can ever say. It leaves room for grief. It leaves room for questions. And it leaves room for God to be larger than any explanation we would have. Here's what I think that Job 38 asks of us. Keep asking. Keep wondering. Keep refusing explanations that make God cruel or blame suffering people for their own pain. And when someone else is sitting in the ashes, don't hand them your box and tell them, God lives inside there. Instead, pull up a chair. Listen to their question. Admit what you don't know. Because, faith isn't about having God figured out. Sometimes faith is finally admitting that the box was never big enough. Move that down. Joe, well, turn it over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Appreciate that.
not sure how to follow up.
I suspect you're doing just fine.
But just a reminder, I got my lane, Mark. I'm just playing music.
Quite well.
Thank you. I had a Beatles song in mind to make David happy. But, instead, I'm going to go with this song Bob Dylan wrote for one of his children. May God bless and keep you always. May your wishes all come true. May you always do for others and let others do for you. May you build a ladder to the stars and climb on every rung. May you stay forever young. May you grow up to be righteous. May you grow up to be true. May you always know the truth and see the lights around you. May you always be courageous, stand upright and be strong. May you stay forever forever young. Forever forever young. May your hands always be, may your feet always be swift. May you have a strong foundation when the winds of change drift. May your heart always be joyful, may your song always be sung, and you stay forever young. Forever stay forever young. Stay forever young.
We enter into a time that could be prayer, meditation, or just a moment to grab the words that you might need in the moment. But let's bow our heads together. We like our boxes. They make the world feel smaller, safer, more predictable. We place God inside of them, label them with our certainty, and then defend their walls as though we were defending God. May we loosen our grip on the explanations that give us comfort at someone else's expense. When suffering comes, may we resist the urge to call it a lesson, a punishment, a test, or part of some plan we pretend to understand. May we leave room for questions that do not have answers, for grief that cannot be explained, and for mystery that reminds us of the limits of what we know. Like rain falling where no one lives, like grass growing where no one will harvest it. Creation refuses to fit inside our understanding. May we learn to live with that wildness. Not as an excuse for doing nothing, but as an invitation to humility, wonder, deeper compassion. And when someone is sitting in the ashes, may we not hand them our box. May we pull up a chair, listen to their questions, admit what we don't know, and stay. Because faith is not having God figured out. Sometimes faith is finally admitting the box was never big enough. Amen. Receive this blessing. May you walk in harmony with one another in creation, recognizing that we are one. And may you know love and happiness throughout your life. May your words and your actions share that love and happiness with all of those we meet. Yep.
This is a song I wrote from my CD album. This is called In the Meadow. I'm wondering about the holes in the meadow. Where you step down and your feet disappear. Tall grass, our pathways to safety. So hard to follow with eyes full of tears. The sun is shining always in heaven. Yeah, this circle we go. It's finding the way of you. Yes, I know you. From the way along the road, my heart will be still. Been imagining riches and treasure. Wherever you are, joy and laughter appear. But always the reason, faith is the answer. So hard to trust in the mind of fear. The sun shines always in the earth is circles we go. Without smiling for you. Yes, I know you run away long. Salvation always in the heaven. The earth is spins in circles we go. Without smiling for you. Yes, I know you run away long. Yes, stay with me, my beloved. I know where more to go. I heard the song of love in the middle. We always love it. My heart feels it so.